sun was high in the sky, casting its harsh rays over the dusty paths of the village. Amara walked carefully, balancing a bucket of water on her head. As she made her way back from the community well, the weight pressed heavily on her neck, but she pushed through, her steps deliberate. As she walked, the chatter of the villagers faded into the background, her mind preoccupied with thoughts of the harsh words her mother had thrown at her that morning. "You can't even cook properly, Amara," her mother had scolded. "Why do I bother with you? If only you were more like your sisters." Amara shook her head, trying to push the memory aside. She had heard it all before, but no matter how often those words were said, they still stung. She sighed and adjusted the bucket, the cool water sloshing slightly against the rim. "Hey, careful there," a deep voice interrupted her thoughts. Startled, she turned to see a tall young man with a kind smile walking toward her. He looked about her age, perhaps a little older, and carried an air of confidence that immediately caught her attention. "Do you need help with that?" he asked, pointing at the bucket. Amara hesitated. She wasn't used to kindness, especially from strangers. No, thank you," she stammered, lowering her gaze. "I can manage." "You're sure? That bucket looks like it's about to topple," he said with a grin, stepping closer. His tone was gentle, not mocking. Amara bit her lip. Her arms ached from the weight, and her neck was beginning to strain, but pride kept her from admitting it. "I'm fine," she insisted. The young man raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Instead, he walked beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "My name's Jaden," he said after a moment. "I'm visiting the village to oversee a construction project." "And you?" "Amara," she replied quietly, still unsure why he was talking to her. "Well, Amara, it's nice to meet you. I hope you don't mind if I walk with you. This path can get lonely sometimes." She nodded, still cautious but oddly comforted by his presence. As they walked, Jaden made small talk, pointing out the weathered charm of the village and sharing stories about his work as an architect. Amara listened quietly, surprised by how easily he spoke to her, as if he didn't see her as the outcast everyone else did. When they reached her house, Jaden stopped and smiled. "You've got a strong spirit, Amara," he said, his tone sincere. "I can tell." Amara blinked, taken aback. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. She didn't know how to respond, so she simply nodded and muttered a soft, "Thank you." He tilted his head slightly, studying her as if trying to understand her better. "I'll see you around, okay?" With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Amara standing by her gate, the bucket still balanced on her head but her thoughts suddenly lighter. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed more often, sometimes at the well, sometimes in the market. Each time, Jaden greeted her warmly and struck up a conversation. At first, Amara was wary, unsure of his intentions, but slowly, his kindness began to chip away at her defenses. One day, as they walked back from the well together, Jaden asked, "What do you like to do, Amara? I mean, what makes you happy?" Amara hesitated, not used to anyone caring about her interests. I like reading," she said finally. "Books make me feel free." Jaden's face lit up. "Really? That's amazing. Do you have a favorite book?" Amara shook her head. "I don't have many books. I borrow from the school when I can." Jaden frowned thoughtfully. "We'll have to fix that. Everyone deserves stories to escape into." Amara's cheeks warmed at his words. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. It was as though he truly saw her, not as the failure her family claimed she was, but as someone worth knowing. As they reached her gate, Jaden stopped and handed her a small package wrapped in brown paper. "For you," he said with a smile. Amara stared at the package in surprise. "What is it?" "You'll see." That evening, after finishing her chores, Amara sat on her mat and carefully unwrapped the package. Inside was a book, its cover slightly worn but the pages intact. The title read, "1,000 Hills to Climb." Tears filled her eyes as she traced the letters on the cover. It wasn't just a book. It was a gift, a symbol that someone believed in her. For the first time in as long as she could remember, Amara felt seen. She hugged the book to her chest, a small smile breaking through her usual sadness. Jaden's kindness planted a seed of hope in Amara's heart, and though she didn't know it yet, her life was about to change in ways she never imagined. The morning sun peeked through the gaps in the wooden shutters of Amara's room. It was the start of another day, and Amara braced herself for the usual harsh words and impossible demands. She quickly dressed and headed to the kitchen, where her mother and Jasmine were busy preparing breakfast. Amara, don't just stand there like a tree. Go sweep the front yard, her mother barked. Yes, Mama, Amara said quietly, grabbing the broom. As she swept, she heard a familiar voice call out, "Good morning, Amara." She looked up to see Jaden standing near the gate with his usual warm smile. Amara's heart lifted at the sight of him. He was one of the few people who spoke to her kindly. "Good morning," she replied, trying not to sound too excited. Jaden leaned on the gate and watched her sweep. "You know, you're always working so hard. Don't they ever let you rest?" Amara shrugged. "It's what I have to do." Jaden frowned thoughtfully. "That's not fair. You deserve more than this." He paused, then his face brightened. "I came to tell you about something exciting. There's a tailoring training program starting in the village. It's free, and they'll even provide sewing machines for practice. You should join." Amara's eyes widened. "Me, tailoring?" "Yes, you," Jaden said firmly. "You have so much potential, Amara. You just need the chance to show it." Amara hesitated, "But I don't know how to sew. And Mama will never agree." "That's the point of training," Jaden said with a chuckle. "And as for your mother, leave that to me. Sometimes you have to fight for your dreams." Amara's chest tightened at the word dreams. She had dreams once, but they had always seemed so out of reach. Could this be her chance to change her life? She looked at Jaden, his kind eyes filled with encouragement, and felt a flicker of hope. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "You'll do more than think about it," Jaden said with a grin. "You'll join, and you'll be amazing." Later that day, Amara nervously approached her mother with the idea. As expected, her mother's reaction was far from supportive. "Tailoring?" Her mother scoffed. "What nonsense is this? Do you think you can become something just like that? You'll only embarrass yourself." "But Mama," Amara pleaded, "it's free, and I want to learn something useful." "Useful? You're more useful here, doing chores and helping the family. Forget this foolish idea," her mother snapped. Amara's heart sank, but before she could respond, Jaden appeared at the door. "Good afternoon, Mama," he greeted respectfully. Her mother glared at him. "What do you want, Jaden?" "I came to speak on Amara's behalf," he said calmly. "This training program is a great opportunity for her. She's hardworking and intelligent, and I believe she can succeed if given the chance." Her mother folded her arms, clearly unimpressed. "Amara? Amara? Succeed? That girl can barely carry water without spilling it." Jaden didn't back down. "Everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves. Amara is capable of much more than you think. Please, let her try." There was a long silence. Amara held her breath, hoping against hope that her mother would agree. Finally, her mother sighed. "Fine, but if she fails, don't come crying to me." Amara's heart soared. She turned to Jaden, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. The next day, Amara joined the tailoring program. At first, it was overwhelming. The sewing machine felt foreign under her hands, and her stitches were uneven, but she refused to give up. Every day, she practiced until her fingers ached, determined to prove her mother wrong. One evening, as she worked on a simple dress, the instructor, a kind woman named Auntie Rose, approached her. "Amara, this is excellent work," she said, examining the fabric. "You have a natural talent for this." Amara's cheeks flushed with pride. "Thank you, Ma. You just need confidence," Auntie Rose added. "Believe in yourself, and you'll go far." Amara nodded, her heart swelling with determination. For the first time, she began to see herself not as a burden, but as someone with potential. As the weeks went by, Amara's skills improved dramatically. She created her first dress, a simple yet elegant piece that caught the attention of the other trainees. Even Auntie Rose was impressed. Who made this? She asked, holding up the dress. Amara did, one of the girls replied. Auntie Rose smiled. Well done, Amara. This is beautiful. Amara beamed with pride. For the first time in her life, she felt like she had accomplished something meaningful. And though her mother and sisters continued to doubt her, she no longer cared. She was beginning to believe in herself, and that was all that mattered. Jaden visited her that evening, as he often did. How's the training going? He asked. Amara held up the dress she had made. Look at this. Jaden's face lit up. Wow, Amara. This is amazing. I knew you could do it. Thank you, she said softly, her voice full of emotion. I couldn't have done it without your support. You did this, Amara, Jaden said firmly. You're the one who put in the work. I'm just proud to stand by your side. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Amara felt a warmth she hadn't known in years. For the first time, she believed that brighter days lay ahead. Days in the tailoring program turned into weeks, and Amara's confidence grew with each passing lesson. She poured her heart into every stitch, determined to prove herself. Her instructor, Auntie Rose, continued to encourage her, and soon, Amara began creating dresses that caught the attention of the villagers. One afternoon, while Amara was busy sewing at the training center, a woman walked in, her eyes scanning the room. Excuse me, she called, her voice strong and commanding. Who made that dress hanging by the window? Amara froze. The dress she had worked tirelessly on was displayed there, its simple but elegant design glowing in the sunlight. That's Amara's work, Auntie Rose said proudly, motioning to her. The woman approached Amara, her expression impressed. You made this? It's beautiful. Amara nodded shyly. Yes, Ma. I want something similar for my daughter's wedding, the woman said. Can you make it for me? Amara's heart raced. Her first real customer. Yes, Ma, I can, she said, her voice steady despite the excitement bubbling inside her. Over the next few days, Amara worked tirelessly on the dress, carefully measuring, cutting, and sewing. When she finally delivered it, the woman's face lit up. This is perfect, she said, handing Amara her payment. You're talented, my dear. Keep it up. Amara stared at the crisp Naira notes in her hand, her first real earnings. It wasn't just money, it was validation. She had done something worthwhile, something her family couldn't ignore. At home, however, her success was met with skepticism. That evening, as she showed her mother the money she had earned, her older sister Jasmine snorted. So you made one dress, and now you think you're a big deal. Amara didn't reply. Instead, she placed the money on the table and walked to her room, determined not to let their words dim her light. Her mother, however, wasn't as dismissive. She picked up the money and examined it, her expression unreadable. Maybe this girl isn't as useless as I thought, she muttered to herself. As Amara's reputation grew, more villagers began approaching her for dresses. Soon, she was taking orders regularly, her small earnings beginning to pile up. With Jaden's help, she set up a corner in the market where she displayed her work. The once timid girl now stood proudly, showing off her creations to anyone who passed by. One day, Jaden stopped by her stall, his face beaming with pride. You're amazing, Amara, he said, admiring the dresses on display. I knew you could do this. Amara smiled at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, Jaden. I couldn't have done it without you. You did this, he said firmly. Don't let anyone take that away from you. At home, her family's attitude slowly began to shift. Her mother, though still critical, started asking her for small loans. Her siblings, who once mocked her, began to show begrudging respect. One evening, as she worked on a particularly intricate design, her younger brother Austin approached her. Amara, he said hesitantly, can you make me a shirt for school? Amara looked up in surprise. It was the first time any of her siblings had asked her for anything. Of course, she said, her voice soft. Thanks, Austin mumbled, before hurrying away. Weeks later, Amara received an invitation to the Village Women's Association meeting. She was nervous but excited. When she arrived, she was greeted warmly by the women. who had heard of her growing success. "Amara, we're so proud of you," one of the women said. "You've shown that hard work and determination can overcome anything." As the meeting ended, Amara walked home under the soft glow of the evening sky. Her heart was light, her steps sure. She had come a long way from the girl who sat silently on the wooden bench, weighed down by her family's scorn. When she reached home, her mother was waiting for her. "Amara," she said, her voice softer than usual, "you've surprised me. I didn't think you could do it, but I'm proud of you." Amara's throat tightened with emotion. "Thank you, Mama," she said quietly. That night, as she lay on her mat, she reflected on her journey. She still had a long way to go, but for the first time, she felt like she was on the right path. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. Amara's tailoring business flourished as months turned into years. Her stall in the market had become a hub of activity, with villagers flocking to her for her elegant designs. Her earnings not only allowed her to contribute to her family but also gave her a sense of independence she had never known before. One warm evening, Amara sat at her sewing machine, putting the finishing touches on a wedding gown she had been commissioned to make. The soft hum of the machine was interrupted by a familiar voice. "Amara, don't you ever take a break?" Jaden asked, leaning against the doorframe with his signature warm smile. Amara looked up and laughed. "Not when I have deadlines to meet." Jaden walked in and placed a small bag on the table. "Well, I brought dinner for you. You're going to need energy to finish that masterpiece." Amara opened the bag to find jollof rice and fried plantain. "Thank you, Jaden," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You always think of me." "I always will," he replied, his tone suddenly serious. "Amara, can we take a walk?" Amara hesitated but nodded, setting aside her work. The two stepped out into the cool evening, the sky painted in shades of orange and purple. They walked in silence for a while, the sound of crickets filling the air. Finally, Jaden stopped and turned to face her. "Amara, I've been waiting for the right time to say this, and I can't wait any longer." Amara's heart raced. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jaden took her hand gently. "Amara, you are the strongest, most beautiful soul I've ever known. Watching you grow and thrive has been the greatest joy of my life. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Amara's breath caught in her throat. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at the man who had believed in her when no one else did. "Jaden, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll let me stand by your side forever," he said, his voice steady. "Say you'll marry me." Tears streamed down Amara's face as she nodded. "Yes, Jaden. Yes, I'll marry you." Jaden pulled her into a warm embrace, and for the first time in her life, Amara felt completely loved and valued. Their wedding was a modest affair, held under the shade of the village's largest tree. The air buzzed with excitement as villagers gathered to celebrate the union of two souls who had inspired them all. Amara wore a dress she had made herself, a simple yet elegant gown that reflected her journey. Her family attended, though their feelings were mixed. Her mother watched her with a look of quiet pride, while her siblings, still grappling with their past treatment of her, avoided her gaze. As Amara walked down the makeshift aisle, Jaden's eyes filled with emotion. When she reached him, he whispered, "You look stunning." "And you look nervous," she teased, her smile radiant. The ceremony was filled with laughter, joy, and heartfelt promises. When they were finally pronounced husband and wife, the crowd erupted in cheers. Amara's heart soared as she looked into Jaden's eyes, knowing she had found her forever home. In the months that followed, Jaden and Amara worked together to expand her business. With his architectural skills and her creativity, they built a small workshop where Amara could train other young girls in tailoring. She became a mentor, sharing her story and teaching them not just skills, but also resilience and self-worth. One afternoon, her mother visited the workshop. She stood awkwardly by the door, watching Amara instruct a group of girls. When Amara noticed her, she approached cautiously. "Mama, what are you doing here?" Her mother hesitated, then said softly, I came to see you, and to apologize. Amara's chest tightened. Apologize for what? For everything, her mother said, her voice trembling. For not believing in you. For the harsh words. I see now how wrong I was. You've made me proud, Amara. Tears filled Amara's eyes. She reached out and hugged her mother tightly. Thank you, Mama. Amara's life transformed in ways she had never imagined. With Jaden by her side, she built a thriving fashion enterprise that not only changed her life, but also uplifted others in the community. Her family, once dismissive, now looked to her for guidance and support. One evening, as she and Jaden sat on the porch of their newly built home, he took her hand. Do you ever think about how far you've come? Amara smiled, her gaze on the setting sun. Every day, and I'm grateful for every step of the journey, even the painful ones. Jaden kissed her hand. You're an inspiration, Amara, to me, to the village, and to everyone who knows your story. Amara rested her head on his shoulder, her heart full. She had risen above the shadows of her past and found not just success, but love, purpose, and peace. Years passed, and Amara's name became synonymous with strength and transformation in the village. Her tailoring business had grown into a flourishing enterprise, with customers coming from nearby towns to purchase her unique designs. She had also opened a training center, where young women learned not only the art of sewing but also the value of believing in themselves. One sunny afternoon, Amara stood in the training center, admiring the progress of her students. Each stitch they made was a reminder of how far she had come. Just as she was about to leave, a familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. Amara, Jaden called, stepping into the room with a bright smile. In his hands, he carried a small box. I have a surprise for you. Amara walked over to him, curiosity lighting up her face. What is it? Jaden handed her the box, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Open it. Inside was a beautifully crafted plaque that read, Amara's Sewing Academy Empowering Lives. Amara gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Jaden, this is incredible. It's for the official launch of your academy next week, he explained. You've changed so many lives, Amara. It's time the world knows your story. Tears filled her eyes as she hugged him tightly. Thank you for always believing in me. As the day of the launch arrived, the training center buzzed with excitement. Villagers, friends, and family gathered to celebrate Amara's achievements. Auntie Rose, her first tailoring instructor, stepped forward to give a speech. Amara's journey is proof that perseverance and faith can move mountains, Auntie Rose said, her voice filled with pride. She has turned challenges into opportunities and inspired us all. The crowd erupted into applause as Amara stepped up to speak. She looked out at the familiar faces, some of whom had once doubted her, and smiled. Thank you, she began, her voice steady. Thank you to everyone who stood by me, even when I doubted myself. To those who didn't, you helped me grow stronger. This journey hasn't been easy, but it has been worth it. As she continued, her mother sat in the front row, wiping away tears. When the event ended, she approached Amara and embraced her tightly. I don't have the words to say how proud I am of you, her mother whispered. You've taught me what it means to never give up. Amara smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. It's never too late to start believing, Mama. Months later, Amara and Jaden welcomed their first child, a baby girl they named Ella, meaning my God will not fail me. As they held her in their arms, Amara felt a profound sense of completeness. Her home was no longer filled with pain, it was a sanctuary of love and hope. One evening, as the family sat together, Jaden turned to Amara. What's next for you? Amara thought for a moment, then replied, I want to reach more women. There are so many Amaras out there, waiting for someone to tell them they can be more. Jaden smiled, pride shining in his eyes. And I'll be with you every step of the way. Years later, Amara's story became a beacon of hope for many. Her academy expanded into multiple towns, empowering women and breaking the cycle of doubt and despair. She built a legacy rooted in resilience, compassion, and determination. One day, as Amara stood in her bustling workshop, Ella, now a vibrant young girl, tugged at her dress. "Mama, when I grow up, I want to be just like you." Amara knelt down, her smile radiant. "You can be anything you want to be, my dear. Always remember that." As the sun set over the village that had once been her cage, Amara looked around and realized it was now her haven. Her past no longer haunted her, it had shaped her into the woman she had become. With Jaden by her side, her daughter in her arms, and a thriving community surrounding her, Amara knew her story had the happiest ending of all, a life filled with purpose, love, and endless possibilities. Lesson from Amara's story. The story of Amara teaches us that resilience, self-belief, and hard work can transform even the most difficult circumstances. Despite facing rejection, ridicule, and challenges from her family and society, Amara did not allow these obstacles to define her future. Instead, she used her pain as fuel to pursue her dreams and prove her worth.